In the days of King Ahasuerus, who ruled over a vast and mighty empire stretching from India to Ethiopia, there was no kingdom as grand as Persia. Shushan, the capital, was the seat of his power, where the king's palace rose high above the land, gleaming with gold and marble, adorned with rich tapestries and precious gems. King Ahasuerus, a ruler of unparalleled wealth, was known not only for his power, but also for his feasts, where he would display the glory of his kingdom for all to see. One such feast lasted an entire 180 days, a half-year of splendor, where nobles and officials from every province gathered to honor their king. When this great feast ended, the king hosted another celebration, a 7-day banquet for all the people of Shushan, from the greatest to the least. The palace gardens were transformed into a paradise of beauty, with couches of gold and silver arranged on mosaic pavements of alabaster and marble. Drinks were served in goblets of gold, each unique, filled with the king's finest wine. It was a time of merriment, where the generosity of the king seemed without end. On the 7th day, with his heart merry from wine, King Ahasuerus commanded his servants to bring Queen Vashti before him. He wished to show her beauty to his guests, for she was lovely to behold. Yet, when the servants delivered the king's command, Queen Vashti refused to come. Her defiance was a shock to the court, and murmurs of discontent spread among the guests. The king, humiliated and furious, consulted his wise men, who advised that Vashti's disobedience would set a dangerous precedent for women throughout the kingdom. If a queen could defy the king, they reasoned, what example would this set for others? Thus, it was decreed that Vashti would no longer be queen, and her position would be given to another, someone more worthy in the king's eyes. In the wake of Vashti's banishment, the king's anger subsided, and his thoughts turned toward finding a new queen. A decree was sent throughout the provinces to gather the fairest young women to the palace, where they would undergo a year of beauty treatments before being presented to the king. Among those chosen was a young Jewish woman named Hadassah, known by her Persian name, Esther. She was an orphan, raised by her cousin Mordecai, a man of wisdom and unwavering faith in the God of Israel. Esther was unlike any of the other women brought to the palace. Though she was beautiful, with a gentle and radiant presence, it was her kindness and humility that set her apart. She followed Mordecai's counsel and kept her Jewish heritage a secret. In the palace, she found favor with Haggai, the custodian of the women, who provided her with the best accommodations and special care. As the months passed, Esther's grace and charm continued to captivate those around her. When the time came for Esther to appear before King Ahasuerus, she asked for nothing extra to enhance her beauty, trusting in the favor of God. The king, upon seeing her, was struck by her radiance and chose her to be queen. A great celebration was held in her honor, and gifts were distributed throughout the kingdom. Yet, despite her new position, Esther remained humble, always mindful of Mordecai's guidance and the unseen hand of God at work. Meanwhile, Mordecai, who often sat at the king's gate, discovered a plot by 2 of the king's eunuchs to assassinate Ahasuerus. Mordecai informed Esther, who relayed the warning to the king in Mordecai's name. The plot was foiled, and the incident was recorded in the king's chronicles, though no reward was given to Mordecai at the time. As the years passed, a man named Haman rose to power in the kingdom, appointed by the king as his chief advisor. Haman was proud and arrogant, demanding that all bow before him. Mordecai, however, refused to bow, for he would bow to only the God of Israel. Haman's pride turned to fury, and he resolved not only to punish Mordecai, but to destroy all the Jews in the kingdom. Using deceit and manipulation, he convinced King Ahasuerus to issue a decree for the annihilation of the Jewish people, presenting it as a necessary measure for the security of the empire. When Mordecai learned of the decree, he tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes, mourning the fate of his people. He sent word to Esther, urging her to go to the king and plead for her people. Esther was filled with fear, for no one could approach the king without being summoned, on pain of death. Yet Mordecai reminded her that she might have been placed in her royal position for such a time as this. Esther called for a fast, asking Mordecai and all the Jews of Shushan to join her in prayer and fasting for 3 days. She and her maids did, likewise, seeking the favor and guidance of God. On the 3rd day, dressed in her royal robes, Esther approached the king's throne. Her heart pounded with fear, but she was resolved, saying to herself, "If I perish, I perish." As the king saw Esther, his heart was moved, and he extended his golden scepter to her. With great humility, she invited the king and Haman to a banquet she had prepared. At the banquet, the king, intrigued by her request, promised to grant her any desire, up to half his kingdom. Yet Esther, in her wisdom, asked only that they come to another banquet the following day. Haman left the banquet elated, boasting to his family and friends about his wealth, his power, and the special favor shown to him by the queen. But his joy was overshadowed by his hatred for Mordecai, who still refused to bow to him. At the urging of his wife and friends, Haman constructed some gallows on which to hang Mordecai, intending to ask the king for permission the next morning. That night, however, the king could not sleep. He ordered the Chronicles of the Kingdom to be read to him and was reminded of Mordecai's role in saving his life. Realizing that Mordecai had never been honored, the king decided to rectify this oversight. The next morning, when Haman arrived to request Mordecai's execution, the king asked him how man whom the king delighted to honor should be treated. Believing the king referred to himself, Haman described a lavish display of honor, only to be commanded to bestow this honor upon Mordecai. Haman's humiliation was complete as he led Mordecai through the streets, proclaiming, "Thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor." The second banquet was held in the grand dining hall of the palace, a setting of unparalleled splendor. The table was adorned with the finest linens, golden platters, and goblets that sparkled in the soft glow of the palace torches. Esther, radiant in her royal attire, greeted King Ahasuerus and Haman with grace, her heart steady despite the weight of the task before her. As the wine flowed and the king's mood lightened, he turned to Esther and asked again, "What is your petition, Queen Esther?" "It shall be granted to you." "What is your request?" "Even to half of my kingdom, it shall be fulfilled." Esther's voice was steady but carried the depth of her emotion as she replied, "If I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it pleases the king, let my life have granted me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. If we had been sold merely as slaves, men and women, I would have remained silent, for our affliction is not to be compared with the loss to the king." King Ahasuerus' face darkened, his eyes blazing with anger. "Who is he and where is he who has dared to do this?" he demanded. With courage born of her faith, Esther pointed to Haman and said, "A foe and enemy. This wicked Haman." Haman's face drained of color, and terror overtook him as the king rose in fury, storming into the palace garden to gather his thoughts. Haman, knowing his fate was sealed, threw himself at Esther's feet, begging for mercy. But even as he groveled before the queen, his actions sealed his doom, for when the king returned and saw Haman's desperation, he interpreted it as an attack on the queen. One of the king's servants, seeing the king's wrath, spoke up, "Behold, the gallows that Haman has prepared for Mordecai, whose word saved the king, is standing at Haman's house, 50 cubits high." The king declared, "Hang him on it." And so, Haman was taken and executed on the very gallows he had built for Mordecai, a vivid demonstration of divine justice. Yet the story did not end with Haman's downfall. Though he was gone, the decree he had orchestrated to annihilate the Jews was still in effect, for the laws of Persia could not be revoked. Esther once again approached the king, falling at his feet and weeping as she pleaded for her people. "If it pleases the king," she said, "and if I have found favor in his sight, and if the thing seems right before the king, and I am pleasing in his eyes, let an order be written to revoke the letters devised by Haman, which he wrote to destroy the Jews in all the king's provinces." The king extended his golden scepter to Esther and granted her request, empowering her and Mordecai to write a new decree. This new decree allowed the Jews to defend themselves against any who would attack them. It was sent out swiftly to all the provinces in the empire, written in every language and script so that all could understand. When the day of the battle came, the Jews, armed with the king's support and emboldened by their faith, triumphed over their enemies. Throughout the provinces, no one could stand against them, for the fear of God and the favor of the king protected them. Mordecai, who had been elevated to a position of great power, became a respected leader, working for the welfare of his people. The victory was celebrated with great joy, and the Jewish people established the Feast of Purim to commemorate their deliverance. It was a time of feasting, gladness, and giving gifts to one another and to the poor, a testament to God's faithfulness and the power of standing firm in faith and courage. As the years passed, Esther remained a beloved queen, and Mordecai continued to serve the king with wisdom and integrity. Their story became a source of hope and inspiration for generations to come, a reminder that even in the darkest times, God's providence is at work, and his plans cannot be thwarted. The story of Esther is one of courage, faith, and the triumph of good over evil. It teaches us that God places us in positions and circumstances for a purpose, and it is our duty to step forward in faith when the time comes. Esther's bravery, Mordecai's unwavering faith, and the ultimate deliverance of the Jewish people stand as a testament to the power of trusting in God's sovereignty.